Hello and welcome to the CSU system-wide CSUBUY Procure to Pay, or as we like to call it, P2P demo series. We're excited to have you join us as we continue preparing for the rollout of CSUBUY P2P across all CSU campuses. P2P is a comprehensive system-wide solution designed to streamline and standardize the full procure to pay process. This powerful tool brings together multiple functions under one platform, including supplier self-registration and access to a system-wide shared supplier database, requisition entry and purchase order issuance, receipt tracking and payment processing, and a centralized location for routing and collecting all necessary financial and compliance approvals. By integrating these capabilities, P2P supports greater efficiency, transparency, and consistency in our procurement and payment activities across the CSU system. Today's session is one in a series of demos that aim to give you an early look, a peek behind the curtain at various parts of the new system. To respect your time and ensure clarity, we're breaking down the different functions of P2P into focused demo sessions. Please keep in mind that this is not a training session. These demos are for general exposure only. Formal, hands-on training will be provided closer to your campus's go-live date. Each demo will follow the same webinar format and will be recorded. Recordings will be available on your campus's CSUBUY P2P website for those unable to attend live. The Q&A feature will remain open throughout today's session, and we'll do our very best to answer as many questions as possible. At the end of the demo, we'll also share the name and contact information for your campus lead so you know who to reach out to with questions or follow-up needs. Once again, thank you for being here. Let's get started. Here's what we'll cover in today's session. We'll start with a brief introduction to CSUBUY, then review the overall project timeline and current status. We'll provide some context for vouchers and receiving in the new P2P system, and then move into the demo itself. Please note, for any AP team members on this webinar, we will be focusing on the department end user experience and not the operational team functions. To support the Chancellor's Office core team with the P2P implementation, the non-live campuses have been organized into regional groups, with each group assigned a strategic advisor. The strategic advisors are Carrie Schmidt, Nicole Lack, Tawny Fleming, and myself, Sarah Rumiano. Each of us brings extensive experience and expertise in procure-to-pay processes, and we are here to help guide and support campuses throughout their implementation journey. Note the live campuses are shown with green dots. The first two campuses successfully went live with P2P in October 2023, marking a major milestone in this system-wide transformation. Since then, two additional waves have continued the momentum, bringing more campuses onto the platform. With the introduction of the Chancellor's Multi-University Collaboration Initiative, the timeline for full implementation has been accelerated. As a result, the remaining campuses are now scheduled to go live by early 2026, ensuring that the entire CSU system benefits from a united, modern procure-to-pay solution.
Before we dive into functionality, let's take a moment to review the vision and goals of CSUBUY P2P. Understanding the why helps us better understand the design and decisions that have shaped this project. Our vision for P2P is to standardize procurement processes across the CSU, reduce manual steps, and drive efficiencies through automation. Ultimately, this means saving time, reducing risk, and lowering costs. The objectives of P2P are centered around creating a streamlined, integrated platform that simplifies and enhances how we manage procurement and payments across the CSU system. The graphic on this slide visually represents the entire procure-to-pay life cycle and the key functions that P2P supports. Starting with shopping for goods and services, users can engage in purchasing with access to preferred, contracted, and sustainable suppliers. This flows into requisitioning, ordering, and receiving, all of which are handled in a centralized environment with fewer manual steps. The process concludes with invoicing and payment, emphasizing automation, minimal touch points, and visibility throughout. What's important to understand is that P2P will replace many of the fragmented campus-specific tools and manual workflows currently in use. It consolidates supplier management, including self-supplier registration and a shared system-wide supplier database, requisition creation, purchase order issuance, receipts, and invoice processing, all into one cohesive system. While P2P will integrate with PeopleSoft CFS, allowing for necessary financial synchronization, the day-to-day work will take place within the P2P platform. For example, users will initiate and approve requisitions, manage POs, and review receipts and invoices, all within P2P. To keep these demos digestible, we are breaking down the full functionality of P2P into multiple demo sessions, each highlighting different aspects of the platform.
The P2P platform offers a range of valuable benefits. For suppliers, it ensures timely payments and provides convenient self-service tools to track invoice and payment status. For internal users, it streamlines the purchasing experience and automatically routes requisitions and purchase orders to include all necessary financial and compliance approvals. The new P2P platform will replace the current CSUBUY marketplace that requires a P card to complete transactions, so it will also reduce the amount of monthly transactions that will need to be reconciled. At a system-wide level, the platform enhances data quality, increases visibility across campuses, and supports our ongoing commitment to operational efficiency, accountability, and strategic improvement. This slide shows our high-level timeline. The 14 campuses that are part of this acceleration project are currently in the implementation phase, with readiness and deployment activities scheduled throughout early 2026. Now we're going to shift into voucher and receiving portion of today's session. This will lay the foundation for understanding what you'll see in the demo. Please note that the configuration you'll be presented is currently from a test environment. Your campus configuration may look different. Now we will hand it off to Michael to demonstrate. Michael, please introduce yourself and get us started.
Hi there, my name is Michael McNairn. I'm a system admin for CSUBUY at the Chancellor's Office, and I'll be covering vouchers and receiving demo today. And a few disclaimers, some of these which has been said before, so that might be a repeat. This is not a complete training. This is just a demo, just kind of a high-level overview. Complete training will be done later. It's closer to go live. We'll also be working a lot in what we call UIT, or the test environment. It looks very similar, maybe a few different colors as what would be live in production when that goes live. But the basic functionality is the same, so that's why we're doing the demos in this site. And we'll be presenting this from the end user perspective. I will be covering a lot of content today. It's best to save all the questions until the end, just in order to get through the content. We don't have a chat, but we do have a Q&A session. So if you have a question, you can post it there. We'll do our best to answer those and respond to those, or you can wait until the end of presentation and we'll handle additional questions. And I may go through this a bit fast for it to sink in. This meeting is being recorded, so you can review it later for greater detail. There have been other demo sessions and other topics that cover other parts of the system, such as shopping, requisitions, approvals. And so the content that is shared today will build upon those other demonstrations. And today what we'll be covering is vouchers and receiving. So basically, this is all about vouchers and receiving from the end user perspective. So shoppers, requesters, approvers. In other words, everything you want to know about invoicing and vouchers for non-AP people. Here's a simplified version of the slide that was shared earlier. It kind of shows a life cycle of an order within the procure-to-pay process. So this is everything that happens to an order in P2P CSUBUY. Each one of these might include a function, or it might include a document that processes that part of the order. So starting out shopping, you select items, what you want to shop, or have a certain form that you want to provide for shopping. That creates a cart, and carts produce requisitions. And requisitions are basically the order of what you want. Requisitions are submitted. Whoops, sorry about that. Lost my presentation. Try this again. Requisitions are submitted, goes through an approval process, and eventually gets turned into a purchase order. The purchase orders gets sent to the supplier. The supplier fulfills that order, whether it's goods that are shipped to the campus or services may be provided to the campus. So they fulfill it somehow. After that, there's a receipt, either receipt of goods or an acknowledgement that the services were performed, services rendered. The supplier provides an invoice that gets processed through a voucher in the system. And eventually, after all the voucher is approved, the payment can be made to the supplier. So that is the full cycle of an order. Throughout this cycle, there's basically an order owner. The person maybe not necessarily processing the order or processing the different parts of the requisition, but there is an owner. So there's a requisition owner who's usually the same as the PO owner and the voucher owner. It's your owner. It's your stuff. It's what you want to be ordered, and you are helping make decisions, making approvals, verifying that it happened. And so that's a key person, part of this process. We'll be talking about the receipts and vouchers mostly today in today's content. So this is the test environment of procure to pay and CSUBUY, and basically I wanted to show you that the different documents part of that same process: requisitions, purchase orders, and vouchers. Here's a requisition document, provides enough information, supplier, parts needing to order. All this data is basically copied over to the next document for processing, and maybe include a little bit other fields of information. So here's a requisition. This turns into a purchase order of that same thing. This is what gets sent to the supplier. And when the supplier sends the invoice, it turns into a voucher. So supplier invoice information, it's basically the same data that is the order that's going all the way through the system. And the voucher gets processed. If needed, there's a receipt attached to it, and it's paid. So let's talk a little bit about how the supplier sends the invoices to CSUBUY. There's two main ways. They can send it electronically or manually. That's how the invoice gets into the system. Let's take another step back and say for what types of orders are being placed through the system. There's kind of two main orders. If you think about what has been done in the procurement credit card marketplace in the past, we call that the P-card marketplace for short. A lot of punch-out suppliers like Amazon, Staples, CDW, B&H, Fisher, those types of companies are set up to where it's a electronic system. You just punch out to their site, shop what you want to order, and it comes back to CSUBUY, you place the order. So that is basically, it's all electronically. We call it punch out. The order gets sent to their company electronically, and the first part of this supplier sending the invoice back is that supplier will send the invoice electronically back into CSUBUY. And for example, on this voucher here, you can see the voucher source being electronic. So it's all automatic. It's called CXML, the machine language, basically one computer sending information to another computer. It's all automatic. Another way that we have the punch-out orders. So most punch-out orders are the automatic electronic vouchering. There's another main type of order called the form request order, or filling out a form like a goods and services request form. When that is sent off to the supplier may choose to invoice different ways. They can do it through a supplier portal, which I'll talk about in a minute, or send the invoice kind of the old-fashioned way, either email or mail or somehow, and it would get input manually into the system. So that's, the types of orders also kind of relate to the type of invoicing get submitted into the system. So this was electronic. Here is a sample of supplier portal. Basically, the supplier has the same version of the software, CSUBUY. It's powered by Jagger software. They go into their side of the system. They see the same order that we have, and they say, yep, we are invoicing against it. So they just click the button. It provides an invoice against the order, and that invoice comes over as supplier portal, which gets attached to this order. Voucher for processing. The last way of how an invoice gets in the system is manually, the voucher source manual. And basically that would be if the supplier sends the invoice by email or snail mail or however, the accounts payable tech will attach that invoice to the purchase order and create a voucher against it for processing and payment. So that's how invoices are getting submitted. Using this voucher as a sample, I'll kind of show some basically how the voucher is set up, some navigation here. Every voucher has header information, very similar to a purchase order. It has the supplier. It has invoice details. So supplier name, when the supplier sends the invoice, there's a supplier invoice number, not to be confused with the voucher number. So a lot of times the voucher will get submitted and some people have need to make the distinction between the voucher number, which is the CSUBUY document here, versus the supplier invoice. That's the number that they use for this system, and that would also be included on this voucher just for reference. That way everybody has the same data. We're talking about the same thing, how to process the invoice. So there's header information, and here's the voucher owner. This is basically the same owner that's on the requisition, the purchase order, and now the voucher. It can be changed if necessary. If somebody leaves, somebody else should be processing it, et cetera, so it can be changed. Below the header information is the lines on the order. This is the same lines that were on the requisition and the purchase order, basically what was being bought. It has description, or it may have a form attached, and the chart fields that's attached to this of where the money is going to get charged to against the account information. So I'm going to show another set here. In this voucher, it's basically another voucher. It has the same setup. I want to use this voucher for workflow. So workflow is basically showing the step-by-step process how a voucher goes through for review, approval, and processing to final payment. So very similar to requisition and purchase order, each document has their own workflow. Now we're in voucher workflow. So on the right-hand side of the screen, there's the steps of what this document will go through. It might be different for different documents depending on what is being bought, how it's getting processed, etc. So the basic workflow is it's submitted, goes through some automatic validation steps. It gets sent for receiving. Now we're going to talk about receiving in a minute, which I'll show more in details, but that's one of the steps. Receiving, then it goes to AP review, maybe correcting any errors or exceptions in final review, and then some more automatic steps to get sent to processing the payment. I'm going to show you this button here is show skip steps. Don't worry about this too much. It's just all these different background steps that are skipped, just letting you know that there's a lot of background processes that are happening. Depending on where this voucher gets routed, who it needs to go to, who it needs to see, the computer was all set up to look at all of that. However, only things that you will see are the steps that apply to this order. If it doesn't apply, it's not going to show, it's going to be skipped. So we just hide all those other skip steps, and these are the only steps that apply to this order. So let's talk about receiving for a bit now. Receiving is done in a couple different ways. There's some background information at which we need to talk about receiving before I actually show you how to enter a receipt or click that approval step. Receiving is basically broken up into two main different ways, two-way or three-way. We call that matching. A two-way match is the voucher and the invoice, the supplier invoice. So basically the order and the voucher. Three-way is that same order, the PO, the invoice, and a receipt. So a receipt is that additional document to make it a three-way. In general, two ways are normally services. There's no goods to actually create a receipt against. So in those cases, the user will just acknowledge that yes, services were rendered, were completed. So we got the PO, the invoice, and that step of it's kind of an okay to pay, or yes, I confirm the supplier did the work. It's now completed. It's okay to process. So that's more of an approval step. When there's goods involved, then the goods would be entered. There'd be a receipt entered against those goods. So that's another document, which I'll show you in a minute, how to enter a receipt in that document. Okay, now let's dig down a little bit deeper. To make things process more automated and more streamlined, most goods have a receipt. However, we're making things a little bit easier. So we're kind of splitting that up into high risk and low risk. If a receipt is an office supply, like you got some pens and some Post-its, maybe some paper, it's low dollar, low risk. Not a lot of people really need to see that. That's not property tagging. There's no inventory. There's no asset management, all this stuff. So really, we don't need to enter a receipt for those types of items. That will make it a little bit quicker in processing. So instead of entering a receipt, it's just a simple approval that verified that approval, yes, I got my stuff. It's just a quick approval button instead of entering a receipt. So the commodity codes of what you're buying, depending on what you buy, will determine, is this an item that requires a receipt? Is it just a two-way versus three-way? Is it a high risk, which would require a receipt, etc. So there's all these different variables about how things could go to make things a little quicker and easier. And one last thing that I'll tell you before we show a demonstration of receipt is your campus may be set up one way or another. You may have a centralized receiving department, basically the shipping and receiving, meeting the trucks at the receiving dock when the truck delivers goods, they're received, and the staff there may enter a receipt at the computer right there. So that is, they're entering receipts against orders. That is centralized. Other campuses have what we call a decentralized receiving, which means the staff at the receiving dock is not going to enter receipts. They take it off the truck and just deliver it to you at your office on campus. If it happens to be one of those items that it's high risk or an item that is determined to require a receipt, that end user, the requester in the office, will be entering a receipt against the order. And some campuses may have a hybrid of centralized and decentralized. So all that background information put into place of receiving, now we can show you what some receiving looks like. In this voucher, going down to the step, it has that step here, workflow step of verified received. This lets me know it does not require a receipt document. However, it does require an acknowledgement of saying, yes, I got my stuff. So when it comes down to that spot in workflow, the voucher owner, which is usually the requester, not always, but the voucher owner will get a notification saying, you have a voucher to approve. Basically, you sent the order in, purchase order got sent to the supplier, supplier's invoicing it. Now we're processing the voucher, processing it, that invoice for payment. It comes to you as the order owner and saying, you need to verify it. Did you get it? Did they, you look at the item, it says line for services. Did the supplier perform those services? Was it done? Did they complete their work? And that's what it comes to you is saying yes. And all you need to do is just click the approve button and it approves and it moves on to the next step, which I'll show you here. As simple as that. I'm going to go back into that voucher just to show you after my approval. Here's the same voucher. It said I approved it. It is now in that next workflow step, AP review. So now AP is going to look at it, review it, make sure it's all correct for processing, and then once it's approved, it'll get paid. Let me show you the other way of entering a receipt. This voucher from this supplier came in, and that notification says hold for receiving. That's a little bit different than saying just verify received. This says I need a receipt entered against this voucher before it can go to accounts payable. So looking down this stuff, we bought some gasoline, and there's a quantity of 4. So this is where the end user would do this, or the receiving dock staff would do this. Whoever has the receiving role would go in and enter a receipt against this voucher. So on vouchers, it's really easy to see related documents. You have the requisition and the purchase order. The receipts are basically made off the purchase order. So go to the purchase order, and basically same information here, it just happens to be on the purchase order. And there's a tab called receipts, and enter a receipt. Just shows all the lines on the PO. This PO just happens to have one line. Nothing's been received yet. Is this the line that I want to enter a receipt against? And I'm going to enter a quantity receipt. That brings up this receipt document. And there's a lot of opportunity to provide additional information, like how it was shipped. Is there a tracking number? Is there a packing slip number? All that, depending on what your campus wants to see in these receipts. The simplest form is what we need to do is just see the quantity. There was 4 ordered, and we are going to receive all 4. The status is received. So Click on that, complete that step, and that just says we've now received, we created a receipt against this order. Going back to the PO, across the tabs at the top, you can see now there's a number 1 here against this receipt. And again, related documents, there's the voucher that this was attached to. Let's go back to the voucher and see what happens. Look at the workflow. It is an automated step, and normally it would, normally that the need for the receipt would get met. The receipt was entered and it would automatically go to the next step. Again, this is test environment, and so things may not be working like production would work, but that's how the need is met about the receipt being entered, and then it'll move on to accounts payable for processing. So what happens in accounts payable? Accounts payable will review it, make sure the supplier sent the right information in terms of matching up invoice information against the order, see that any kind of verified receives were approved, or the receipt is entered there. They'll, if the supplier has any special setup regarding payments or withholding, anything like that, AP will review that. If it all looks good, once they've processed it, they will just hit approve. It'll move on to the next step. Now, in some cases, there might be exceptions. Sales tax doesn't line up. The quantities don't quite line up with what was ordered versus what the supplier sent. That will go to an exception step, and then maybe, depending on some of those things, it may also go to an AP manager review. Let me show you some of these things, like it can look at tax details within the voucher. You look at the matching tab on this voucher. On the left-hand side, there's some arrows that you could be like 2 errors, meaning that it's a 2-way match, and 3 arrows, meaning it's a 3-way match. It also says right there, matching method, 2 or 3. If it's red, that means it's unmatched. If it's green, it is matched. If it's unmatched, it'll highlight saying, what's wrong? Why is it not matched? So it says, I ordered 10, but I have not received. It's still waiting, hold it for receiving. For whatever reason, if this was the same PO as my test, it didn't. I think I was put a receipt up against a different order, but basically it shows that I ordered 10, but there's no receipt against it. So it can't be processed yet because we need to enter a receipt. It says receipt is required. So that's why there's an exception. Hold for receiving. So those are the different steps that happen through AP. Now, one thing that could happen is AP will return it to you. AP return it to the end user for either correction or questions. They can also make comments. So there's comments on this voucher. This has a comment of T, but basically you can do all your communication between AP and the department of entering comments. You can say, you can notify certain people that are basically part of the order already. You can add people. When you add a person to this list and have a check mark, it will notify them and send an email saying there's a comment against this voucher. You need to go look at it. Or you could just basically put a comment to the voucher only without notifying anybody, more like a note to file. All the communication can be done within the system. That's the whole goal. You don't need separate emails. You don't need pieces of paper on somebody's desk. all the routing and approvals and communication is done right within the document and within the system. Okay, the last section which I want to show you is how to find vouchers. We're searching for vouchers and searching for different data information, help you follow up on your orders to see things where they are. Basically, there's all the information, and we kind of say there's no secrets in CSUBUY. The information's there. You can go find it. And a lot of times you can find it yourself without needing to contact somebody else. So for a supplier is asking you about, hey, where's my payment? We did the stuff, we shipped it to you, I haven't been paid yet. You can look at that yourself because the information is right there. So for example, if you have a voucher number, you can search for it specifically. You can look up in the upper right, there's a quick search. I got a voucher number, I'm just gonna enter it and search for it. The nice thing about that is any other related documents attached to it will also show up. So this voucher, which I search for, is on that PO. So I can go to either one if I want. I can also search for all vouchers. So here is a list of all vouchers, that same voucher that I want to look for. If I enter it here, there's my voucher there. I can just go directly to it. On this search voucher screen, it's very similar to searching for other documents like recs and POs. There's some quick filters on the left that you can narrow down your list by. You can add filters at the top, additional filters, and you can add additional columns in your report to show what kind of data you're looking for. The nice thing about this vouchers, you can search by supplier, by PO number, by voucher number. There's a lot of, it's pretty smart and pretty powerful in its searching. There's also like pay status here, or workflow, the voucher workflow status, and then the pay status. So you can see if it's paid or in process or payable, exactly where it is in process. You can, if you know a purchase order number, another nice thing is it'll show all the vouchers that are attached to that PO, and you can see where they are in the process. So in this specific example, there's 3 that are payable. They're not paid yet, but they're ready for payment. And one's canceled and one's in process. So kind of quick information you can look at. On the voucher itself, and I'm going to show production here. This is production, colors a little different. This is a real live voucher here. I'm showing this because there's some additional information here. So this kind of the same setup, header information, line information. They're buying 2 different things. There's chart fields, and this voucher is for $45. This workflow is complete, but the other thing is this voucher has been paid. Once the voucher is paid, the information comes up and back from CFS and updates the voucher under this payment information category here. You can see the status is paid. If it's not paid yet, it might say in process or payable. This is how it was paid, check. That is determined by how the supplier is set up in the system using their supplier profile. They could be getting payment by check, by ACH electronically, or wire, which is in the case of most foreign suppliers have their payment wired to them. Payment record number, that's the check number, when it was paid. Voucher payment amount, so that's $45. So this full voucher was paid there. And the total payment amount, that means if there were other vouchers that were attached to that same check, they got paid for many different vouchers with one check. So that's information that is available for people to see and say, oh yeah, those two things that we bought on this order, it says the check was paid and processed on October 1st. So that's information that can be shared, and that should answer people's questions. I want to show you some workflow on this as well. This, the voucher source electronically, so this is a punch out supplier, and it got approved, verified received, so no hard receipt was entered. It was sent to the department user and they say, yep, approve, I got my stuff. And it did not go to AP, say no AP, no exceptions, no AP manager. So in these cases, again, low dollar, low risk, simple item, it's normally against a punch out supplier. If it meets all these different criterias, it's kind of goes what we call a fly through. Low dollar, low risk. It doesn't need everybody looking at it. If there's no errors, it can just be processed and paid. So that's the beauty of this automatic system. It can just get paid. Now remember, this verified received is not financial approval. It's not the stamp the invoice saying okay to pay. All the financial approval was done on the front end of this order, early on in the requisition. That's what we call DOA. Let's go back to a simple order here. On this voucher, let's go back to the requisition. And in the requisition workflow, well, this one was bypassed, but the requisition workflow says this wants to be ordered. Here's a rec for stuff that we want to buy. It goes against this chart field string for this dollar amount. Will you approve this? Financial approval is done on the front end. Once it's approved, everything else just gets processed. The receipt verifies saying, yep, we got our stuff, and then it's okay to pay. So that financial approver doesn't need to see it again on the back end because they only saw it once on the front end. That concludes my demonstration. We can open it up for questions now, or if the team has any Q&A in the chat they want to cover, feel free to.
Michael, can you do me, or Sarah or Tawny, can you do me a favor and show their campus project contact at the end? I think we're getting a lot of questions on prior demos and how to access them and where their campus it's available. So maybe just take a pause to provide that for our attendees.
Yes. Let me share.
So this is a list of your campus contact person and their email address. So you could reach out directly to them and ask, specific questions to your specific campus. Also look for their P2P website as well, because the prior demos should be posted.
We have answered over 50 questions, but we still have some coming in. So maybe we'll just read these out loud and we can answer them as we go. I'll start. It looks like Carrie, you're responding to one of them. So I'll start below that. Can you show what would happen if the customer doesn't find internal damage until later and the PO is soft closed? How do we enter a return or for a credit or replacement? If we enter a negative receipt, will it reopen the line to receive? There's a lot of questions in here. So let's just start with one. How do we enter a return for credit or replacement? You want me to stop sharing?
There's nothing to share
Yeah,
necessarily. So if the invoice was paid against that PO, and that's been paid, the PO will go into soft close, right? But it was realized that it was damaged. You will have to work with the supplier to get a replacement for that order. More than likely, the supplier will replace it without invoicing it. If the supplier actually ends up crediting that amount, because it's already been paid, the recommendation would be to ask for a check reimbursement for that. That's the easiest way, because depending on the supplier, if we don't buy from that supplier again, a credit memo will just sit there for a while in CFS. So that's kind of the recommendation there. How do we return
Second part of that is if we enter a negative receipt, will it reopen the line to receive replacement and take PO out of the closed status?
Yeah, it's hard. I wouldn't necessarily do that if the invoice has already been paid. It doesn't really do anything in that regard. The best path forward is to call the supplier, work with them to see how they're willing to provide you with the credit or provide you with the reimbursement or replacement for that broken item. There's another question there.
Yeah, how do we track credits if the supplier says just throw away the bad item or the wrong item was shipped?
So in the receipt and the comments of that PO, you can actually document that information. If the supplier is just going to say throw it away, don't worry about it, I would just document it in the PO, and if ever they come back and say anything, you have that documented with the transaction.
This next one is a follow-up to a previous question, but I don't know what question it was, so maybe one of you answered, but it says, I'm asking about the filters that one can choose to view as a column. Does that sound familiar to any of you?
It's probably the search columns when you come in, and you could decide what the columns are as for each of the various screens you have access to in the search screen. That's probably what they're talking about. Michael, I don't know if you can quickly go there, but it's any user can customize their search screen by changing the columns that are available to you in that screen. So you would just go to the cog on the right where it says 200, and from there you can add columns to that you think is useful for you. You can rearrange them.
I think did we do reports in our last demo?
We
Ye-
did.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would go back and look at that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's probably what they're talking about.
What about assets that need tagged? I would say follow up with your campus project, P2P project team, because that is campus specific. Can ad hoc routing be used at the voucher level? So like so we would create a voucher. Are you talking about maybe to receive? And no, the answer is no, right? The PO owner, I think, has to be the one to create the receipt. Anybody can create a receipt, but the only one that will send it along in the workflow is the PO owner. And I learned that one the hard way. Okay, that one. Just follow up with questions if we're not answering you completely. Can you explain more about the punch out low dollar risks and how it bypasses AP? Okay. I don't know too if you want to jump on that about what will fly through.
Oh, the bypasses?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Michael kind of covered it, but I can cover it again. So there's two different bypasses that occur in the application. So the first one from an end user, or the first one is that when a request comes in and it's a punch out order, it's low dollar, meaning it's less than $5,000, and it's low risk, meaning it's not a high risk commodity that needs to stop in workflow. If those three criteria are met, then the voucher flies through after DOA approval. So request gets submitted, goes to DOA approval. It will bypass procurement and the PO will be sent to the supplier. The other bypass happens in voucher workflow, which is slightly different than the one that I just explained. So in voucher workflow, if the invoice has been fully matched, there's no withholding requirement, it's within tolerance and the tax is okay, then it will bypass AP. So it will still stop with the end user, depending on whether it's a create a receipt or a voucher approval. But in those cases, if the invoice is matched and within tolerance, and there's no exception or withholding requirement, it bypasses AP.
Okay, the next question is, so there's no return to vendor function?
No, the same process would happen today where you contact the supplier to get a return in the works.
And the next one is, how are suppliers being trained on submitting invoices?
So majority of our the high volume transaction we have are usually through our punch out suppliers, and they are via CXML, so it's an electronic invoice. For any of the other suppliers, we have communicated their ability to send a supplier to send invoices through their supplier portal. However, we are not able to force them to do so. And there is future efforts in looking into how do we decrease the amount of manual invoices that come in. So there is a future enhancement in the roadmap to help mitigate that.
My campus includes the link to that guide on every single one of our POs that passes through procurement. So I don't know, probably be future enhancement to add that as a standard PO note. Okay, the next one, the demo just showed Fisher as a supplier. How, once the PO is open, is the actual item to be purchased is high risk. I'm guessing this category includes chemicals flagged, so it is then routed to EH&S for approval.
So that is correct. So it's based on the commodity code, right? That is considered high risk. The rule of thumb that I tend to teach people is if there's a stop in workflow for a compliance, then that is considered high risk. So in that case of that example, if it's a chemical, it will stop with EH&S and it will also stop with procurement because it's considered high risk.
Okay, the next question for SFSU, we can work with you offline if you want to shoot one of us an email, probably Carrie an email.
I already saw the comment, so
Okay.
I'm not sure who that individual was. So yes, if they want to
Can you
connect
say your email,
me,
Carrie?
yeah, I'll put it, it's Carrie, CARRIE .Schmidt, SCHMIDT @sonoma.edu. So go ahead and reach out to me. I saw it and I can work with you.
Okay. What is the difference between those filters that have an asterisk and those that don't in the search screen?
So the stuff with the asterisk, so because we're using Jagger, that's the platform we're using, there's common fields that they already have. So those are the ones without the asterisk. Anything with the asterisk is a custom field that CSU have created in the application to meet our business needs. So it's specific to us. We created those in the application.
The next one is right along those same lines, so I'm going to consider that one answered. So the PO owner requester cannot forward or ad hoc to their manager for verify receipt.
They can. It auto routes to the PO owner every single time. If for verify receipt, if it's two-way, it is that individual's decision to ad hoc or forward. Forwarding, so I like to say this to our users, forward means you're having that person approve in lieu of yourself. So you need to ensure that person has the right authority to approve in your place. Ad hoc means in addition to you.
But you can do that at the receipt function?
Verify receipt, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
When the P2P system goes live, should the vendors include under the punch-out catalog be added to the exclusive merchant code list in the US bank system under the P-card program?
It's not going to be paid through the Pro card, so maybe that's what the confusion is.
Oh, okay, yeah. So everything in P2P and the P2P punch-out system no longer requires a card. So
And I
there's
don't
no
know that,
reconciliations done on those purchases.
yeah, and I
and
don't know that you would exclude them in the exclusion. I would leave it alone because
Mhm.
there might be a reason that you would need to use your Pro card at Fisher for some reason. But working in P2P and using the punch out, you will not 99% of the time need it, but I wouldn't do an exclusion.
We would like to confirm whether these vendors should be restricted from P-card usage to ensure purchase. Oh, I think you just answered that part.
And that's really a campus decision. So you'll want to talk to your project team and your Pro card administrator about that.
What is the tolerance referred to by intolerance? So if the invoice is within 10% or $100, whichever is less, then it will allow the transaction to go through if the invoice is different from what is the requisition was or the PO. Can you show us how to assign a tag on a taggable asset item? This is very like the configuration related to asset management and Rex is campus specific. So I will say you'll need to follow up with your campus project team. For low risk bypass vouchers that bypass AP, does it bypass the AP manager as well?
It could, unless you have the AP manager turned on for training purposes.
Can you confirm that a requester does or does not need to be level 5 for a fly-through? Or is it that the level 5 DOA approver is needed for a fly-through?
So I don't want to confuse the fly-throughs with the low dollar, low risk fly-throughs. So that the intent of the low dollar, low risk fly-throughs is that because it's low dollar, low risk, procurement doesn't have to get involved, nor does the compliance people would have to get involved. If there is a want from a campus to utilize the DOA 360 level 5 fly-throughs, that is a possibility. What that means is that if the individual has delegated authority for level 5 up to whatever that dollar threshold is for your campus, and they submit that requisition, it could fly through DOA approval. In essence, if that was the case, it completely flies through the entire requisition workflow.
Will vendors currently set up in PaymentWorks be automatically registered as a vendor in P2P? So no, emails are sent out. So any vendor or supplier that your campus uses today, and another campus is already using them, a live campus, that supplier will be extended to your campus and automatically there for you to use. If that supplier does not already exist in P2P, then they will be invited to register in P2P, and they'll need to do that for you to continue doing business with them. Does the system create the voucher only after the receipt is confirmed?
Two different things. So depending on the receipt required, the creation of a receipt can happen at any point in time, even before the voucher gets entered into the application. So don't think of it as one linear, one thing has to happen before the other. Because if it is a three-way match, you can create a receipt at any point, even before the invoice comes in. Should I go to the next one, Sarah or Carrie?
Yes, so
Yeah.
for cases where the voucher was mistakenly approved, can the owner or requester reverse the approval of the voucher after selecting approved?
So unfortunately not. The best recommendation I have there is if you accidentally approved it and it should not be, then I would make a comment on the voucher, on the invoice, as soon as possible, tagging the AP team. So that way they are aware to prevent that from moving forward. Because AP will get that voucher after an end user would.
Okay, the next, do we have AI agents that can streamline this?
This as in,
The system? Not sure what that means.
yeah, maybe clarify that. And
Mhm.
we'll probably just take a couple more because we're over time
Yeah, we're
now.
over time.
I see the hand, just 1 second. Do departments have access to upload invoices or the vendor and AP tech? I mean, technically the departments do have access to upload an invoice. However, it will not route anywhere. So you need to send it to your AP team will probably have a P2P invoices type email set up that you'll want to send the invoice to. AP, if the supplier, if it's not coming over through CXML or the supplier portal, then AP needs to create that voucher to kick off that process. So,
I think we had a couple hands. Chris, do you
Yeah.
want to say
Okay.
who's can be unmuted?
Singing.
Singing Chen.
Hello, my name is Singing. I feel a lot of these tasks could be benefit if we combine AI agents and wanted to know, do we have any direction towards that way?
So can you give an example of where in the process
When
that,
we're doing the purchasing and so forth with the receipts and then the asking people to be in charge of certain delegations, that could be a task for the agent.
those are our automated agents already.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the thing is, my question is, when we're trying to delegate the task, then how do we tweak it?
So all the delegation is worked in and configured in the system, so you
Uh-huh.
shouldn't be tweaking it at that point. It's your campus has gone through months of configuration and
Uh-huh.
identifying who the appropriate fiscal approvers are, who the
Okay.
appropriate compliance approvers are, different dollar thresholds, different, commodity code triggers. So all of that has been worked through on your campus
All right.
already. Yeah.
Then it's also implemented that in case someone leaves their position or was upgraded to a different position, it's already configured that way too.
Well, I mean, obviously, like not knowing the future, we wouldn't know who to redirect to, but there are things in place to get those moving. So yes, your campus will have control over how to move those along and
Okay.
reprogram in the appropriate people.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll take the last question. All campuses are going live at the same time, and that should be the very end of January-ish. So no hard date right now, but we're shooting for the end of January. And will we share the Q&A? Have we done that? Do we have the ability to do that? I don't think we have.
We haven't done it, but we can
do it. But also it will all be recorded. And so you can refer back to this portion of the meeting as well. Okay. Thank you, everyone who hung in there until
Yeah, thank
Again.
you. Sorry it went over a little bit. Thanks so much for attending, and reach out to your campus contacts for additional information and where to find the recording.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.